One day, we see a man named Mikami, an ordinary guy in his mid-30s, living a boring, routine life with no excitement. And one day, he goes out to meet his co-worker Tamura. But suddenly, he gets stabbed while trying to save him. At that moment, he falls to the ground and starts bleeding heavily. Suddenly, he hears a mysterious voice recording his last words and turning them into special skills, just like in video games. Mikami stays like that until he loses consciousness and dies. But the surprise is that he wakes up to something strange. He discovers he didn't die, but moved to another world. But quickly, he feels something is wrong, he can't move normally, and he doesn't feel his body. After a while, he finds out he was reborn, but in the form of a slime. At first, he gets upset because he turned into a slime after being a handsome human. But he finds no solution other than accepting the situation. He starts getting used to his new shape and wanders inside the huge cave he found himself in. With time, he discovers he can eat plants, and he doesn't need to sleep or eat to stay alive. But he eats the plants just because he has nothing else to do. And he starts asking himself, where does the food he swallows go, especially since he doesn't have a stomach? Suddenly, he gets a reply from an internal system telling him that the food is stored in his unique skill, Predator. At that moment, Mikami remembers that voice. He heard it when he was dying in the real world. So he asks the system, who exactly are you? The system replies that it was formed inside him due to a special skill called Great Sage. Then Mikami starts to understand what's going on, and he asks the system about the Predator skill. So the system explains that it allows him to digest anything and take its abilities, and also analyze it and use it however he wants. Mikami finds it a bit complicated, but realizes that this skill is very powerful, and he wonders how a weak slime has such an amazing ability. But in the end, he decides to use it for his own good since it became part of him. He starts trying the skill on the plants he ate, and indeed he's able to analyze them. And he discovers that the herbs he ate are called hypocute herbs. These are very rare plants, full of magical energy, and used to make magic potions and healing ointments. At that moment, he decides to turn all the plants he ate into magic potions and store them inside him to use later if needed. And since he has nothing else to do, he starts making huge amounts of potions. But later, curiosity takes over him to try the skill on new elements, so he asks the system about the shiny rocks in the cave and whether they are valuable too or not. The system replies that the stone is called magic stone and it's a mineral full of magical energy too, which makes it very valuable. Mikami gets excited at that moment and decides to devour those stones too and analyze them, and starts devouring all the plants and magical stones in the cave. His excitement continues until he falls into a deep lake, and at first he gets scared that he might drown and die, since slimes don't float on water, so he must suffocate and die. But then he remembers that he's no longer human, and that he doesn't breathe at all. He keeps thinking of a way to get out of the water until he uses the water pressure boost skill and moves at high speed on the water and succeeds in getting out of the lake. Then he finds himself in front of a magic barrier, and at that moment a mysterious voice calls him and asks if he can hear it or not. Mikami looks around him but finds nothing, so he ignores the voice. But the voice yells at him and says, I know you can hear me, answer me quickly. Mikami argues with the voice at first, since he can't see it or communicate with it properly, being in slime form. So the voice gets angry, and we find out it's a giant and mighty dragon, who roars so powerfully that the cave shakes. Mikami gets very terrified, and the dragon says, I wanted to be kind to you since it's the first time I see a visitor here in ages, but you seem rude and want to die. Mikami gets really scared and apologizes immediately, and tells him he didn't know he could hear thoughts, and explains that he's a slime with no eyes or mouth. The dragon laughs loudly and says, I like you, kid, because of your boldness, and decides to grant him eyes to see. Mikami gets amazed and very excited, but the dragon sets his conditions, of course, so Mikami asks what the conditions are before agreeing. The dragon assures him that the conditions are very simple, which are to not be afraid of him once he can see him, and to come visit him from time to time just to chat, and that's all. Mikami finds the conditions strange, but agrees since they're simple and won't harm him. The dragon explains that he's been sealed inside the magical barrier for over 300 years, and since then he's been trapped here and bored, as he doesn't meet anyone or do anything. The dragon asks Mikami if he knows how to use the magic sense skill, and Mikami replies that unfortunately he doesn't. So the dragon tells him that if he can use that skill, he'll be able to sense the magical particles, and thus he'll be able to see normally. Mikami decides to try using the skill, and tries with all his might, and the idea starts to succeed. Mikami gains the magic sense skill, and the system asks him if he wants to activate the skill, and he immediately agrees. At that moment, Mikami gains the sense of sight, and becomes very happy because he can see life around him again. He runs to see his reflection in the water, and confirms that he's definitely a slime. The dragon calls him afterwards, so Mikami goes to thank him, and when he looks looks at him, he's shocked that he's a huge and powerful dragon. The dragon then introduces himself and says, "I am Veldora the Storm Dragon, one of the only 4 true dragons in the world." The dragon reminds Mikami of their promise, which is to come visit him every day to chat. Mikami assures him that he'll definitely keep the promise and that he's not scared of him at all, although he really wants to run away. But the dragon stops him and says, "There's something strange about you. Normally, as a slime, you're a low-rank monster, which means you can't think at all. So how do you have self-awareness? You're a special and unique type, aren't you?" Mikami is puzzled by what he said and replies, "What do you mean by unique monster?" The dragon explains that a unique monster has extraordinary abilities that make it different from the rest of its kind. Mikami explains his situation, that he was originally human but got stabbed and died in a tragic accident, and when he woke up, he found himself in this world as a slime. The dragon understands the situation and tells Mikami that he's not the only one who came to this world the same way, and that people like him are called otherworlders. He explains that they gain special and unique abilities when they come to this world, so Mikami realizes that he got all these skills because he crossed into the new world. He gets excited about meeting other people and hopefully some Japanese like him. The dragon gets surprised and says, "What? You're leaving already?" Mikami notices that he's sad, so he decides to stay with him for a bit longer, and the dragon becomes very happy, and Mikami asks him why he was sealed here. The dragon explains that 300 years ago, he accidentally turned an entire town to ashes, so a very powerful human appeared, but he underestimated them and lost the battle. Mikami is shocked that he lost despite his power, so the dragon replies that the human was very powerful, and humans used to call her the hero, while the hero called herself the summoned. He explains that the summoned are brought from another world to this one in their natural forms. They chat a bit about the new world, and Mikami starts to feel comfortable with him, and they decide to become friends. Over time, Mikami and the dragon start thinking of a way to break the seal the hero put on him, and Mikami tells him he's sad now that he found out his only friend in the new world has been imprisoned in a magic seal for 300 years. The dragon replies that he appreciates those feelings and wishes there were a way to get him out of the place, but in reality, the dragon will die anyway in another 100 years since his magic energy is about to run out. Mikami gets upset because the dragon will die after all the years he's been trapped here, and suddenly gets an idea to try, which is devouring the prison using the predator skill, but sadly, the attempt fails. The dragon tells him he tried many things since the first day he got sealed, but all methods failed too, so Mikami asks the system if there's a way to free the dragon. The system replies that if he can analyze the prison from both inside and outside, then maybe he can remove it, and the dragon says it's a great idea, but sadly he can't analyze the prison from the inside because his skills are sealed due to the magical prison he's in. So Mikami suggests giving him the data while he analyzes it from the outside, and the dragon agrees and warns him it'll take a lot of time, asking if he really wants to stay here all that time. Mikami replies that the plan won't work because he wants to leave and search for people from his country, Japan. He suggests a weird idea, which is to store him in his stomach so he can keep him with him for as long as possible instead of letting him die when his magic runs out. The dragon really likes the idea and asks Mikami to do it right away. They agree on the idea, and just as Mikami is about to devour the dragon and the prison, the dragon stops him and says there's something important they must do first, which is giving him a name. Mikami likes the idea and names the dragon Rimuru, and Rimuru names the dragon Tempest, and they're both happy with their new names, and Rimuru gets a promotion immediately once he gets his new name. Rimuru carries out their idea right away and devours the dragon along with his prison, and the system asks Rimuru if he wants to analyze the unlimited imprisonment skill right away, and Rimuru agrees of course. The scene then shifts to the kingdom of Bloomond, which is near the cave where the dragon and Rimuru are. We find the Baron talking to the head of the Adventurers Guild, and he asks him if he's heard of the Storm Dragon before, and the head replies, "Yes, of course," and the Baron asks what actions the guild plans to take regarding the Great Dragon. The head replies that there's nothing specific, and that they'll continue their daily missions normally, and the Baron is shocked and says, "What do you mean? The dragon's disappearance could provoke the rest of the monsters and magical beings, and make them attack the kingdom. They're also worried at the same time about the Empire's forces crossing the forest's borders, because if they do, they'll definitely take over in a flash." The head tries to calm the situation and asks the Baron if he slept well last night since he looks really tired. He tells him, "Don't worry, I'll investigate the situation personally, and that's just because we're old friends." So the Baron calms down a bit and thanks the head for his help. We go back to Rimuru in the cave after several days, and he's roaming everywhere in the cave trying to find an exit but with no luck, but he devours everything he finds and gains as many useful skills as he can. But suddenly, a giant and terrifying snake appears to him, and Rimuru gets very anxious and doesn't know how to escape, but then gathers his courage, remembering that he faced the dragon before and wasn't scared at all. Rimuru gathers his courage at that moment and strikes with all his might at the the snake using the water blade attack and cuts its head off in seconds. Rimuru is amazed by the power of his impressive technique, which is way stronger than he imagined. He then thinks about devouring the snake using the predator skill so he can analyze it and gain new skills, so Rimuru devours the snake right away and shivers at first because of its disgusting taste, but then gets thrilled with the amazing skills he gained like poison breath and heat sense. Not to mention that he can also mimic the black snake's shape, and Rimuru continues exploring the cave to gain even more useful skills. He attacks every monster he encounters inside the cave, defeats them, and devours them all, and by doing so, he gains many amazing new skills from all the creatures. Finally, after wandering in the cave for weeks, Rimuru reaches the cave's door at last, the only exit available, and thinks whether he can destroy the door using the water blade skill, but suddenly, the door opens, and he finds a group of adventurers entering the place. Rimuru hides immediately, and it's his first time seeing humans in this world, and he doesn't know why humans would come to a place like this, but it's clear that they're adventurers, and Rimuru thinks about showing himself to them, but remembers he's a slime, so if he appears before them, they'll see him as a monster and kill him right away. Rimuru waits until the adventurers enter the cave, then takes the chance and escapes outside. Rimuru is amazed by the view of nature outside, and joy fills him because he's finally free after being trapped in the cave. But suddenly, while walking in the forest, a group of goblin dwarves appears before him, and they look very nervous and scared of Rimuru, and the leader of the dwarves asks him, "Oh mighty lord, do you need anything from us?" Rimuru is surprised that they're calling him the mighty lord, and introduces himself, telling them he's just a slime. The dwarves get even more frightened and tell him they're aware of his tremendous magical power. Rimuru asks them what they need from him, and the leader replies that they sense the presence of a powerful magical being, so they came to check if there was any danger to them. Rimuru replies that he doesn't feel anything like what they're saying, so the leader says, "You must be joking. Even if you appear before us in that weak form, we can still sense your immense power," and they ask him afterward to help them protect their village. They take him to the village and introduce him to the village chief, who explains that after the great dragon disappeared, strong monsters began coming to the forest to take it over, and a pack of strong wolves appeared trying to wipe them out and take their land. At that moment, the wolves actually reach the goblin village, and everyone gets scared and panic takes over them. All the villagers think of running away, but they don't know where to go. Rimuru reassures them and tells them there's no need to worry. He'll defeat the wolves himself. The goblins are overjoyed and thank Rimuru for his help, and from that moment, Rimuru becomes the leader of the goblins. Rimuru gets ready to fight the wolves and looks among the goblins for those who can fight, but he's shocked to find that only a few of them can, because most of them have weak bodies and are in very bad condition. But Rimuru tries to encourage them and make them feel the importance of the situation they're in, and tells them the important thing is to focus on giving their best in this battle. He asks them to take him to the injured members of the tribe, so Rimuru goes with the village chief to the injured tent, and finds that many of them are in very critical condition, to the point where the village elder has lost hope of healing them, and tells him they did all they could to save them but with no use. Rimuru checks the wounds of the injured himself and finds that the wolves' claw marks have sunk deep into their bodies in a way beyond expectation, and at that moment, an idea pops into Rimuru's mind, and he brings one of the injured into his body to heal him, and when he brings him out, he's completely healed as if nothing happened. The village chief and everyone else are amazed, and they get excited and try this method on the rest of the wounded, and Rimuru starts healing them with the healing potions inside his body, and he succeeds in saving them all in the end. The villagers thank him, and he asks them to help him build a large fence around the village, and in the evening we find the wolf pack preparing to attack the goblin village, because the dragon's power disappeared, so now they can do whatever they want, and the wolf leader tells the pack that today is the promised day when they'll completely destroy the goblin village. All members of the pack get excited and rush quickly to attack the village, but they're shocked as soon as they arrive when they see a fence surrounding the village from all directions. The leader's son notices Rimuru standing in front of the fence waiting for them, and the wolf leader is surprised to see a slime challenging them. Rimuru tells them that if they don't retreat, he'll have to wipe them out, so the leader yells at him and asks how he dared to order them when they're the pack of hungry wolves, and the leader orders the wolves to attack the village and destroy it along with the fence. At the moment the wolves get close to the fence, the goblins shoot arrows at them and succeed in taking them down, not to mention the steel threads that hit the wolves as soon as they get close and kill them. The wolf leader gets furious when he finds out that the threads were made by Rimuru, and he attacks with all his strength and incredible speed toward Rimuru, without realizing how strong Rimuru really is. At the moment the leader is about to pounce on Rimuru, Rimuru grabs him with the sticky threads he placed as a trap, and as the leader struggles to free himself and finish off Rimuru, Rimuru prepares the water blade skill and slices the leader's head off his body. The leader's son and the rest of the wolves are shocked by what's happening and that their leader is dead, and Rimuru calls out to them and tells them they now have two choices: either surrender or die, and Rimuru is afraid they might continue fighting to avenge their leader, which would make things things difficult if they attacked all at once, and he thinks of a way to scare them. So he activates the predator skill and devours their leader and analyzes him in front of them, and Rimuru gains several new skills like telepathy, intimidation, and strong sense of smell. Rimuru then transforms into the form of the wolf leader, and all the members of the pack are amazed at the sight they're seeing. Even the goblins are confused and don't understand what's happening. Rimuru tells the wolves that if they obey him, he'll allow them to leave safely. He uses the intimidation skill and terrifies them all, but something strange happens and the wolf pack approaches Rimuru, and he thinks they still want to fight, but to his shock, all members of the pack submit to him, and Rimuru returns to his slime form. At that moment, the villagers realize they finally won the battle, and the celebration continues among the villagers and happiness fills their faces. The next morning, Rimuru gathers with the goblin tribe and the wolf pack, and he thinks about how he can take care of them all. Rimuru notices that the number of goblins is close to the number of wolves, so he pairs them up so they can live together. He then divides them into teams as well. A team for hunting, a team for building houses, and a team for strengthening the village defenses, and Rimuru isn't sure how to communicate with them, so he asks the village chief for everyone's names. The chief replies that they're monsters, and that's why they don't have any names, so Rimuru decides to give names to everyone. Everyone gets excited and thanks him and overflows with joy, but Rimuru doesn't understand why they're so excited, and they line up in a long queue so each one can get his new name from Rimuru. He starts with the village chief and names him Rigurd, and the next one Rigur, and Rimuru continues naming everyone, and the village chief gets worried about Rimuru and warns him that his magic energy might run out and that would exhaust him a lot. Rimuru reassures him that everything's fine and continues naming the villagers, and with that Rimuru finishes naming all the goblin villagers and gets ready to name the wolf tribe members, and the first one among them is the son of the previous pack leader whom Rimuru killed in battle, and Rimuru is worried the young wolf might resent him since he killed his father after all. Rimuru thinks of a name for him and names him Ranga, but as soon as he names the first one among the wolves, Rimuru becomes extremely tired and faints because his magic energy ran out, as he named all of them at once. Everyone gets worried about Rimuru, and the system informs Rimuru that he'll enter sleep mode because the supply of magical particles he stores has completely run out. Rimuru remains in that state for 3 days, until he finally wakes up and regains consciousness, and at that moment he's surprised by a strange girl in front of him, but she seems to know him and welcomes him warmly, and tells him she'll go inform the village chief that he's awake. The village chief comes in, and is completely shocked by Rimuru's new form and how strong he's become. Rimuru asks him what happened during the past 3 days, and the chief explains that all of this happened because he gave them names, which allowed them to evolve. Rimuru now understands the reason behind the villagers' happiness when he decided to give them names. Ranga enters excited and very happy that Rimuru recovered, and Rimuru is surprised by everyone's joy and the fact that they've all evolved and become stronger. But Rimuru is stunned when he sees that all the hungry wolves have evolved, even though he gave a name to Ranga only. Ranga explains to him that they are all one, meaning they are all connected through their brotherhood, and that's why Ranga's name became the name of the entire clan. Rimuru understands that they all evolved through a shared name, and Ranga tells him their name is no longer the Hungry Wolves, and now it's the Storm Wolves. Rimuru then thinks about how to provide food and shelter for this large number so they can live safely, and he returns to the village and gathers all the villagers. Rimuru tells them that they are now one big family, and that's why they need to set rules and laws for everyone to follow, and he gives them 3 main rules they must stick to. The first is not to attack humans, the second is no fighting among themselves, and the third is not to look down on other races. Everyone agrees to the rules, and one of the goblins asks him why they shouldn't attack humans. Rimuru explains to him that the reason is simple, it's just because Rimuru likes humans. Everyone agrees to the 3 rules, and Rimuru explains that humans live in groups, and if they kill one of them it might lead to war due to revenge, not to mention that harmony is much better because it will make life easier in many ways. Rimuru then appoints the village chief as the ruler of the goblins, and Rigurd becomes very happy with Rimuru's trust and thanks him from the bottom of his heart. After that, everyone works on strengthening the village defenses, building shelters, and gathering food from the forest. But Rimuru isn't satisfied with the weak houses the goblins are building or the poor clothes they're wearing, so he decides to go to the nearest town to meet the dwarf craftsmen and get their help in building the houses. And indeed, he sets off on his way with a team of wolves and goblins. We see Rimuru heading into the forest with his friends to go to the town and meet the dwarves. They keep moving along the Amildo River path to the north to reach the town of Dworgen, the Dwarven Kingdom. But Rimuru and the friends stop for a while on the road to rest. Rimuru asks Rigur about his family and learns that he had a brother with a name, but he died in the battle between the wolves and goblins. So Rimuru asks Rigur about his brother and how he got his name. He tells him that his brother got the name from a monster passing through the forest called Gelmud, because he saw potential in his brother to lead the goblins one day. Rimuru asks who exactly is Gelmud. Rigor tells him that Gelmud is an officer in the army of the great demon lord. Rimuru is surprised to know there's a demon lord in this world, but then remembers the hero the dragon told him about. He says that if there's a hero, then of course there's a demon lord, and he hopes he never meets them, and that's what matters. After a while, Rimuru and the friends continue their journey after resting, and they rest again at night and roast meat to eat. Rimuru calls out to Gapta and asks him about the town they're heading to. Gapta replies that it's called the Armed Nation of Dworgen, and it's actually a very beautiful town built inside mountain caves, which were of course modified. And it's not just home to dwarves, it also houses elves and many other creatures. He also tells him that the king of the town is called Gazel, and he's known as the king of heroes, and everyone greatly admires him. Rimuru gets worried that monsters like them might not be allowed into the town, but Gapta reassures him that it's a free trade town, and fighting is forbidden inside by direct order from the king. We learn that the king's strength comes from the power of his army, which is the dwarf army, known for not being defeated in over 1,000 years. Rimuru is amazed by the strength of the dwarf king and his army. Gapta is about to tell Rimuru that the last time he went, he got into a fight because they didn't let him in, but Rigor interrupts and tells Rimuru that everything will be fine, so there's no need to worry at all. The next morning, they continue on their way until they reach the nation of Dworgen. Rimuru is very excited to meet the dwarves and elves. He asks the friends to wait for him outside, and tells them he'll go in with Gapta only, to avoid drawing attention inside if they all enter as a group. The friends are worried about him, but he reassures them that everything will be fine. Rimuru and Gapta head to the gate to enter, and Rimuru notices the strict security there. Gapta reassures him they'll be able to move freely once inside the town. But at that moment, a group of bullies appear and try to harass Rimuru and Gapta. Rimuru learns from Gapta that this isn't the first time he's been bullied at the gate, and that he got beaten last time when he tried to enter the town. Rimuru asks Gapta if he remembers their first rule. He replies, yes, which is not to attack humans. Rimuru asks Gapta to cover his eyes and ears. Rimuru then transforms into Ranga's form, and the bullies get nervous, but they get brave and decide to attack him with their team. But we notice that their attacks are very weak and have no effect on Rimuru. Rimuru prepares to attack them at that moment and uses only the intimidation skill to scare them, but it's so powerful that it blows them away from in front of him. The gate guards hear about the damage caused by Rimuru's intimidation, and they rush to arrest him. But Rimuru quickly returns to his slime form so they won't catch him. But they still arrest him and Gapta, and the security chief Kaido starts an investigation with them to find out exactly what happened. The chief learns the truth from Rimuru and the witnesses who saw the incident. At that moment, a report comes to the chief about a serious case at the mine, where a group of dwarves were badly injured in the accident that happened. The chief asks the soldier if they have any magic potions, and the soldier replies that all of them were allocated for the war. Rimuru steps in at that moment and tells him that he can help them with the magic potions he makes. He gives them a large barrel of potions. The chief is shocked by Rimuru's ability to create that quantity in an instant and takes the potions to try them, since he has no other option. After the chief saves his dwarf friends, they return together to thank Rimuru for his help. The chief also releases Rimuru and lets him out of prison. He then takes him to have a meal as thanks for his help. Rimuru asks him to introduce him to a skilled blacksmith to help them build houses, weapons, and clothes. The chief takes him to his friend the blacksmith, and Rimuru is surprised to learn that this blacksmith is the chief's brother. The chief introduces him to his older brother Kaijin, and we learn that the friends Rimuru helped with his potions are the chief's and the blacksmith's brothers. Kaijin welcomes Rimuru, and when he learns that he's the one who saved his brothers, he thanks him for helping them. Kaijin asks what Rimuru needs from him, but apologizes because he's currently unavailable due to the minister's impossible requests. Rimuru suggests that he help him and supply him with magic stones in exchange for helping build the village's houses and clothes. Rimuru shows him a sample of the stones, and Kaijin is amazed by the quality of the metal, which is 100% pure. Kaijin agrees immediately and decides to send a team of craftsmen to build his village. Everyone quickly gets to work making the swords so they can deliver them on time, but they're also worried that they might not finish the order on time. So Rimuru decides to help them and uses the analysis and replication skill to create more copies of the sword. The dwarves are amazed by how Rimuru creates all those copies in an instant. With that, he creates more than 20 swords in seconds. Everyone celebrates completing the order on time, and Kaijin thanks Rimuru for his help. In the middle of the celebration with the friends, Kaijin and Rimuru, the minister shows up and annoys them, saying to Kaijin, "What are you doing here? You have time to waste on entertainment." He's about to warn him that if he doesn't send the swords on time, when Kaijin interrupts him and says he already sent them. The minister is shocked when he finds out Kaijin has already sent all the swords, and Kaijin asks him if he wants to see the invoice too to confirm. The minister tries to brush it off and tells him that finishing the job on time is of course expected from him. Rimuru feels that the minister was trying to bother Kaijin on purpose and gave him an impossible request just to annoy him. But the minister still wants to bother Kaijin and his friends too, so he tells them they made a mistake by letting a low-ranking monster like Rimuru in here. He asks the owner of the place if monsters are allowed in, and she tries to explain that Rimuru is a harmless slime, but he abuses his authority to insult Rimuru in front of everyone. Rimuru controls his anger, so he doesn't cause trouble with the minister, but Kaijin gets really angry about what the minister did and punches him with all his strength for insulting his guest. The minister cries and uses his authority, saying, "How dare you? How dare you speak to me like this? I am the great minister." Kaijin grabs the minister and keeps hitting him. Rimuru gets worried about the situation and asks Kaijin if this will cause him trouble staying in the town. Kaijin asks Rimuru if he really needs craftsmen in his village, and asks if he would accept him going with him. Rimuru is shocked by what he said and agrees right away. But the royal guards come immediately and arrest Kaijin and his friends, and they take the unconscious minister to the hospital, and everyone stays in the cell until the trial. Then the time for the trial comes, and everyone attends in front of the king. Rimuru feels from the king's presence that he's so powerful he could be called a monster. But something strange happens during the trial, and Kaijin discovers that their lawyer has been bribed, and that's why he's going to betray them for money. The minister stirs the king up against Kaijin and the others with lies, and Kaijin is sentenced to hard labor in the mines for 20 years, and the rest of his companions to 10 years of hard labor. But the king intervenes at that moment in the judge's ruling, and then greets Kaijin and asks how he is. Kaijin replies that he's fine and that he's happy to see him in good health. The king asks Kaijin if he's interested in returning to the front lines again like before. The minister is shocked by the king's words, and Kaijin replies, "I'm sorry, your majesty, but I've already found a new master." Everyone gets angry at Kaijin's words to the king, and the king is surprised that the master Kaijin chose for himself is just a slime. We see the king then issues a new sentence, which is the complete exile of Kaijin and his companions from the kingdom. With that, the session ends. The king discovers the minister's tricks and orders him to get out of his sight and never show his face again. Rimuru and the friends get ready to leave the town, say goodbye to all their friends, and head out again to return to the village of the goblins and storm wolves. After some time, we return to the Bloomend Adventurers Guild, and we see the adventurers who entered the Dragon's Cave return to the guild and give their report to the guild master. The master understands that there's no real threat from the neighboring Eastern Empire to the Jura Forest where the Great Dragon's Cave is located, but the information is still not confirmed, so the master asks them about the situation inside the forest. One of the adventurers gets nervous and tells him the situation was catastrophic and extremely dangerous, to the point where he should just be glad they returned safely at all. They continue their report to him, confirming that the dragon has completely vanished from the cave, and that the cave is also completely empty of any monsters or resources, and the master is surprised by this information and gives them a 3-day vacation to rest from their journey, so they can explore the forest when they return and check the monster activity after the dragon's disappearance. After that, the adventurers leave to return home, and on the way they meet a masked girl who looks very suspicious, and she asks if they are really going to the Great Jura Forest. One of the adventurers is surprised and asks her why she's asking, and she requests to accompany them there. The adventurers agree and introduce themselves to her, and we learn they are Aaron, Kavol, and Jaido, and the girl introduces herself as Shizu. They tell her they will head out on their journey in 3 days, and everyone goes home. We return to Rimuru with the storm wolf Ranga, who transforms into his original form in front of him and teaches him the new black lightning skill. Ranga is amazed by the power of this new attack, and they continue exploring the area, and Rimuru is very happy with the current state of his new town, especially after a week has passed since they returned from their last journey. We see the dwarves working on developing the town, and all the ogres are closely watching them to learn their excellent skills, and they continue building houses, making clothes, jewelry, and weapons. Time goes back to the moment Rimuru arrived in the village, and he's surprised by the very large number of ogres in the area. The village chief explains that they all came when they learned Rimuru personally provides protection to everyone in the village. Rimuru is surprised by the number and asks the chief how many refugees there are, and he tells him him there are about 500 ogres, and Rimuru thinks for a moment about turning them away, but then remembers that after the dragon's disappearance, all the monsters became active, which is extremely dangerous for all low-ranking monsters. So he's forced to agree to let them join the village, and with that, the population increases and the village turns into a town. Rimuru begins giving names to the 500 newcomers, and everyone evolves, and he spends 3 days as usual resting to recover his magic. We return to the present and see Rimuru still wandering through the town, and he finds Gapta teaching his friends a new skill, which is the summoning skill. Rimuru is amazed and didn't expect Gapta to have such potential. Then the village chief, now the king of the ogres, comes and informs Rimuru that the security team discovered a group of humans on the town's border, and the ogre king suspects that they're from a country trying to assert dominance over the forest. We shift to the adventurer team, who are being chased by giant monsters, but Shizu steps in at that moment and defeats the monster easily with her amazing power, and then attacks the other monsters one after the other and wipes them all out. Everyone is amazed by her incredible strength, but suddenly, a savage ant attacks her and is about to finish her off, and Shizu loses her strength at that moment, but Rimuru appears and defeats the monster with a powerful lightning strike. The adventurers are shocked to see Rimuru's form as a talking slime, and Rimuru checks on Shizu, who thanks him for saving her, and Rimuru takes them to the town. They formally meet Rimuru and learn he's the leader of the town. They thank him for helping them and introduce themselves, and Rimuru realizes at that moment that Shizu is Japanese like him. They then tell him they are here based on a request from the guild master in the kingdom of Bloomond, and they tell him their whole story. He understands from them that the dragon's disappearance created a huge threat for all neighboring countries, which started because of the excessive monster activity, and Rimuru explains to the adventurers that he's building a town for themselves in the forest, and asks if the guild has any objection to that, but they're not sure what their country's opinion is. After that, Rimuru goes out with Shizu, and we learn that she suspects he is also from Japan like her, and they both admit to each other that they are indeed from Japan, and they're happy to meet. Shizu asks him how he came to this world. Rimuru tells her his story from the moment he was stabbed up until now, and learns from her that she's not like him and was summoned. He asks her when she was summoned and what happened to her at that time. She replies that one day her town was burning because of the war, and bombs were falling heavily from the sky, and while she was running away with her mother, unfortunately, she died, and that's when she was summoned to this world. Rimuru then decides to use the telepathy skill to show Shizu his memories, and the skill succeeds, and Shizu sees the world Rimuru came from and how his life used to be. Time goes back to the moment Shizu was summoned to this new world, and her condition was very miserable, and she was severely injured because of the war's aftermath. At that moment, we're surprised by the presence of monsters from the noble races, fighting over the throne of the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord casts a magical spell inside Shizu, and she acts strangely and defeats the Demon Lord's opponent in an astonishing way in the blink of an eye. Shizu then returns to her senses, and the Demon Lord asks for her name, and she tells him her name is Shizu. Over time, Shizu grows up under the care of the Demon Lord, but because of the evil curse inside her, which is meant only to protect the Demon Lord, she ends up killing anyone who even thinks of getting close to him, even indirectly, to the point where she kills her friends without realizing it, and Shizu remains in deep sadness about what always happens to them. We return to the present, and we see that Shizu is constantly resisting the curse inside her, so she doesn't harm those around her, even though it causes her severe pain. Later, Shizu meets Rimuru, and he asks her if she started to like his town. She replies, "Yes, but unfortunately, I must continue my journey." Rimuru is surprised by her words, and she tells him that if she stays here, she'll cause them many problems. He doesn't understand what she means, and she explains that the goal of her journey is to find the man who summoned her to this world and eliminate him. She looks sad at that moment, so Rimuru tries to comfort her and tells her she'll always be welcome anytime in their town. We also see the adventurers getting ready to return to their country, and Eren asks Shizu if she'll go back with them. She's sad that Shizu is going to part ways with them. Shizu replies, "I'll be happy to be with skilled adventurers like you, but unfortunately there's something important I must do in this final journey." Eren is confused by her words and asks her, "What do you mean?" She tells her, "I've lived for decades, so of course I won't live much longer." Eren thinks she must be joking and brushes it off. Everyone gets ready to leave after that, but suddenly Shizu falls into a strange state and starts losing control in front of the curse, and she suffers terribly, and a massive surge of energy explodes from her. The friends are very worried about her, and the curse takes over Shizu, and she starts destroying the place. The adventurers realize at that moment that Shizu is the famous adventurer known as the Conqueror of Flames, and that she has been the guild's hero for more than 50 years. Rimuru asks the Ogre King to evacuate the town immediately, and he understands that something is not normal with Shizu. At that moment, Shizu transforms into the Great Flame Monster, which is the fire spirit Ifrit. The adventurers lose all hope of survival if they get into a battle like this against the fire spirit. But Rimuru has a different opinion, and he asks the adventurers to leave the place quickly. But their leader refuses and insists on helping and confronting Shizu and supporting her. Everyone gets ready to fight, and the adventurers attack the dragons that serve the fire spirit, and Rimuru faces the fire spirit alone. But he notices at first that the water blade attack has no effect on them, so he quickly dodges their strikes. He receives an ice magic attack from Eren, and he analyzes it immediately to use the new magic to defeat the fire spirit's servants. Indeed, he manages to take them out in seconds. Rimuru then prepares for the final battle between him and Ifrit the fire spirit, and he clears the area from the others completely. Ifrit creates many magical clones of himself to fight Rimuru, but Rimuru easily defeats them all with ice magic. Only Rimuru and Ifrit remain, and Ifrit uses the ultimate fire circle spell and traps Rimuru inside a deadly fire tornado. Rimuru is scared at first, but then he realizes he's unharmed because he has heat resistance. Rimuru attacks Ifrit and binds him with his spider threads. Ifrit is shocked and keeps trying to burn Rimuru with his flames, but it's no use. At that moment, Rimuru uses the predator skill and devours Ifrit. With that, the battle ends, and Shizu returns to her senses again, but she's unconscious. We see Ifrit inside Rimuru, trying to use his flames, but the great dragon appears to him and explains that he too must give up, because it's impossible to escape from here. Ifrit is stunned by the presence of the storm dragon here, and at that moment, he realizes he's truly no match for Rimuru. We return to Rimuru as he checks on Shizu after saving her from the curse's control. She regains consciousness and starts telling him about her suffering, and how upset she always is because she ends up killing the people closest to her due to her curse. She tells him her full story, and Rimuru feels deep sympathy for her. She asks him to end her journey and devour her, because she truly hates this world, where she's always been in pain. Rimuru hesitates at first, but then agrees to her request, and she becomes very happy. He learns from her the name of the demon lord he must take revenge on for her, Leon Cromwell, one of the most powerful demon lords. At that moment, Shizu dies, and Rimuru fulfills her wish and devours her using the predator skill. We see the adventurer friends very worried about her, but they also feel reassured since Rimuru is with her. But unfortunately, as soon as they reach the tent, they're shocked to see Rimuru in human form, looking exactly like Shizu. Rimuru tells them what happened, and that Shizu passed away, and that he fulfilled the request she asked of him. After that, the friends bid farewell to Rimuru, as they're finally heading back to their country, and they also need to report everything that happened in this adventure to the guildmaster. After a few days, Rimuru continues to develop his town and strengthens himself as well, so he can prepare for the next adventure and take down the demon lord Leon, just as Shizu asked him to. Time passes, and we see major progress in Rimuru and the ogres developing their town. Rimuru feels very relaxed, because everyone is doing their jobs without him having to order anyone to do anything. Rimuru enters his tent to transform into his human body, and he tries using human senses again, since it's been a long time since he felt like a human. He then thinks about the skills he acquired, and asks the system if he can use the replication skill that Ifrit used in their battle. He finds out he can use all his skills however he wants, so Rimuru is happy and tries it right away. The Ogre King then comes to give him his report and immediately goes to prepare a proper feast for Rimuru, since he'll finally be eating with them for the first time, now that he's in human form. Rimuru then goes to the hunting team, and they tell him there's been some strange movement in the forest lately because of migrating monsters caused by the environmental shift. Rimuru is surprised by their words, and he calls out to Ranga and asks him to go with the hunting team to the forest to check the situation and protect them if there's any danger. The scene shifts to Rimuru as he visits the cave where he and the storm dragon were trapped. It's the first time he's visited the place since they both left it. He remembers the storm dragon, his first friend in this world, and also Shizu. Then he gets an idea to use the degenerate skill he recently acquired to combine skills together. He fuses the storm dragon's black lightning skill with Shizu's scorching flame skill, and this creates a very powerful and dangerous new skill, black flame. Suddenly, Rimuru receives a message from Ranga asking for help, and it looks like he's in danger. Rimuru rushes quickly to reach him and the hunting team, and he finds them in the forest right away. He sees that everyone is badly injured, and 2 monsters are responsible for all of it. We see Ranga still fighting 2 more of those monsters, and a fierce battle is taking place between them. One of the monsters uses her strong magic and manages to block Ranga's attack. Rimuru then finds out that this monster team consists of 6 members from the same tribe. Rimuru learns that they're from an evolved species of ogres. Rimuru approaches them them and asks if they're willing to resolve the issue between them without violence. But he notices that they have a bad impression of him, and they think he's an evil person named Meijin. The monsters shout at him and demand that he reveal his true identity. Rimuru is confused by their words and is about to explain the situation, but their leader won't listen and draws his sword and attacks him immediately. Rimuru dodges the attack easily, then fights back and defeats them all with no effort. Rimuru tries again to convince them that he's not evil, and that he's not the one they're looking for, but it's no use. They attack him again, so Rimuru is forced to show them his true power, and he uses black flame in front of them. Suddenly, the leader's sister steps in and stops the fight, and explains to them that Rimuru is not their enemy, and that he's not the one who attacked and destroyed their village. The leader finally understands the situation and realizes that Rimuru is not the villain who destroyed their village. With that, the situation calms down and both sides agree to talk. The ogre leader asks Rimuru, "Who exactly are you?" Rimuru explains that he's just a slime, and he transforms into his slime form. He also explains that the mask is just a keepsake from someone dear to him. At that moment, they are sure that Rimuru is not their enemy, and the leader apologizes for the trouble they caused him. After that, Rimuru takes them to the village so they can rest and tell him what happened to them. In the evening, all the villagers gather to eat together in celebration of Rimuru being able to taste food for the first time. They sit afterward with the leader of the evolved ogres so he can tell them what happened, and they learn that an army of orcs attacked their village and completely wiped them out. Kaijin and everyone are shocked and can't believe what happened at all, and Kaijin explains that ogres are much stronger than orcs, so it's hard to believe this happened. The leader tells them everything in detail, and Kaijin realizes that something strange is going on, and understands that someone must be supporting the orcs and helping them buy armor and weapons. We then learn that only 6 people from the village survived, and they're the team with the leader. Rimuru asks him about his and his team's plans for the future, and the leader replies that they will regain their strength and attack the orcs with full power to get their revenge. Rimuru asks him where he might find them, and the leader is shocked by the question and doesn't know how to answer. Rimuru realizes at that moment that the leader has no plan at all, so he suggests that he and his friends become his followers and join his town, and promises to provide them with shelter, food, water, and proper protection. The leader replies that this would drag Rimuru into their revenge. Rimuru replies that he's doing this for the good of the tribe as well, since the orcs want to take control of the great forest, so they will definitely attack their village too. That's why he must gather as many followers as possible and prepare for the day he faces the orcs. The leader asks him to give him some time to think about it, and he sits with one of his subordinates to reflect. His follower tells him the offer isn't bad, but the choice is yours in the end, Your Highness. The leader keeps thinking and feels very angry about his weakness. The next morning, he goes to Rimuru and tells him he agrees to the offer, but only on the condition that he will separate from him after defeating the orcs. Rimuru replies that they can do whatever they want, and if they want to stay by his side and help build a nation, he has no problem. The leader pledges his loyalty to Rimuru at that moment, and with that, the evolved ogres become Rimuru's followers. Rimuru asks him to raise his head and calls him to gather the rest of the ogres. Rimuru decides at that moment to give them all names, and the friends are surprised and try to explain that it's not that easy and requires a large amount of magic power. Rimuru assures them everything will be fine, and indeed he names the ogres and immediately passes out. As soon as he wakes up, he sees that their appearances have changed, and the leader explains that they've evolved from ogres to Kijin. At the same time, a massive army of armed orcs is invading the Great Forest with huge numbers, heading toward Lake Sis in the middle of the Great Forest. We learn that the residents of that area are the Lizardmen tribe, and they are watching the orcs from afar. One of the soldiers goes to inform their king immediately of the developments they've noticed in the forest, and that the orc army is planning to invade their land. The king orders them to prepare to defend their land from the enemies, and his daughter, the princess, asks the soldiers about the enemy's numbers. One of the soldiers nervously replies that the army numbers around 200,000 monsters. The princess is shocked by this massive number, and the king wonders how the orc leader can control them and feed them. All the village leaders are extremely nervous and don't know how they'll get out of this disaster. We then see the king call for his son, Prince Gabaru, and we learn that the one who gave him his name is also Lord Jelmud. We find out that this prince is very arrogant because he has a name and thinks he's special, but his father brings him back to reality and tells him he he must complete a mission quickly, which is to gather all the allies he can from neighboring villages and lands. We return to Rimuru's town and see the elder Hakuru training the village children in swordsmanship, and he's a very strict teacher. At the same time, we see the prince and his team heading out to complete the mission just as his father asked. He heads straight toward Rimuru's town but believes that he's very powerful, that he's the strongest monster on Earth, and that he doesn't need anyone's help. He also thinks that all factions should follow him since he's a special person and Lord Gelmud gave him a name. Meanwhile, his teammates keep praising him non-stop. We see Rimuru's town developing over time as more followers join him, with progress in buildings, trade, local products, and industry. Of course, Rimuru walks around the town to check on everyone, and Shuna warmly welcomes him when he visits the silk workshop to learn about the latest developments in silk fabric production. Rimuru greatly praises Shuna and tells her he's completely relying on her to make suitable clothes for all the townspeople. We also learn that Cheyenne is now Rimuru's personal secretary, who informs him of his important appointments, and at that moment she reminds him it's lunchtime. We see Shuna and Cheyenne arguing about who will handle Rimuru's affairs, but of course, Cheyenne wins the competition since she's the secretary. Indeed, Rimuru goes with Cheyenne to eat, and he's very excited, and he meets the rest of the villagers, who are shocked when they learn that Cheyenne is the one cooking today, and they quickly slip away. Rimuru is forced to try the food himself since he hasn't tried Cheyenne's cooking before. Rimuru is confused by everyone's reaction when they find out Cheyenne is cooking, but he's immediately shocked when he sees the food in front of him. Just as he's about to eat, he gets nervous and gives it to Gapta, who walks into the room. At that moment, Gapta's condition worsens, and he panics as if he's been poisoned. We return to the Lizardmen tribe and see their prince on his way to gain the cooperation of all the villages in the Great Forest. He then heads to Rimuru's town, and the prince is thinking about dominating Rimuru, who is just a slime in his eyes, so he can control all the powerful monsters under his command. Back in Rimuru's town, we see Kaijin with Kurobe thinking about inventing new weapons and materials, and they're getting along really well. We see Rimuru sitting with them to check on work progress, but then the Ogre King enters and informs him that an envoy from the Lizardmen village wants to speak with him. Rimuru goes with the Ogre King to meet the Lizardman prince and runs into his Kijin friends along the way, so they go together to see if the Lizardmen will be friends or enemies. As soon as Rimuru arrives, we see the Lizardmen glorifying their prince with a full dramatic entrance, as if he's a legendary hero. Rimuru and his friends are confused by what's happening. The prince makes a very theatrical entrance and introduces himself to them, saying he is Gabiru, prince of the Lizardmen, and the future leader of the Lizardmen. Rimuru becomes very annoyed by Gabiru's arrogance and decides he must teach him a proper lesson. Even Cheyenne is almost ready to explode with anger. Gabiru tells them that they should become his followers because of the orc threat invading the Great Forest, and says that if they join him, he'll protect them, the weak ones, from this great danger. But the moment he calls them weak, he looks at them and can't find a single one who fits that description. So he gathers with his men quickly and asks, "Where are the low-ranking ogres we're supposed to recruit?" Gabiru speaks arrogantly again, and everyone gets angry. They all ask Rimuru to let them kill him immediately, and Ranga is ready to take down the arrogant Gabiru, but Rimuru stops him. Gapta arrives at that moment, so they let Gapta face the Lizardman prince in a combat challenge. If the prince defeats Gapta, then the Storm Wolves will join them. Rimuru encourages Gapta and tells him that if he wins, Kaijin will make him a special weapon. But if he loses, he'll have to eat Cheyenne's food forever. Gapta gets fired up and defeats Gabiru with a single strike in the blink of an eye. Rimuru then tells the Lizardmen to take their prince and leave immediately, and that he'll think about whether to help them or not. But the idea of becoming their subordinate, they can forget it completely. Indeed, they take their prince and run away. We see the great orc army advancing in incredible numbers through the Great Forest. One of Rimuru's people watches them and finds out their number is exactly 200,000 orcs, and he sends all the information to Rimuru and informs him that the army is heading north along the river, meaning they're going straight toward the Lizardmen village. Rimuru sits with his followers to think of a solution to the problem they're facing. He receives news that a forest spirit wants to speak with him. Everyone is surprised because the last time a forest spirit appeared was many decades ago. Rimuru agrees to her request, and she appears in front of them right away through her incredible magic. She introduces herself as Trainee. Rimuru introduces himself as well and asks her the exact reason for her visit. She tells him she needs to ask him for an important favor, defeating the Orc Lord and his massive army. Rimuru is surprised that she's asking him for this request, and the rest of the friends object to her demand, saying it's a very selfish request, and they ask her what she's doing here exactly. They tell her there are many races stronger than their village, so why did she choose to ask them specifically? She replies that they're right, but of course, she can't ignore the presence of a majestic and amazing being like Rimuru, and that the forest spirits won't be able to face the orc army alone if they attack. That's why she came to request help from someone strong like Rimuru. Rimuru tells her that they're still not even sure if an orc lord exists, and if he's truly the one leading the army. She replies that the forest spirits know everything happening in the forest, and she confirms to him that the orc lord does exist. Everyone is shocked and stunned by this terrifying news, and they become sure the orc lord is real. Rimuru asks her for some time so he can decide what to do, and Rimuru spends time thinking with his followers about what action to take. Everyone is nervous about the situation they're in, and after a deep discussion, Rimuru finally decides to accept her request and defeat the orc lord. At that moment, Rimuru thinks he must form an alliance with the Lizardmen village, but he needs to find someone reasonable among them to speak with instead of the arrogant Gabiru, the Lizardman prince. So he asks Sui to take on this mission, and Sui personally contacts the Lizardman's leader to convince him to form an alliance to defeat the orc army. Rimuru agrees to his request, and with that, the plan is ready to cooperate with the Lizardmen village to face the orc army. In the evening, Gabiru finally wakes up after having fainted during his fight with Gobta. He doesn't understand what happened or how he was defeated so easily, but of course he says that Gobta cheated and that's how he beat him, and naturally his followers believe him and praise him as usual. At that moment, the evil Majin who deceives the arrogant Gabiru appears and tells him that he serves Lord Gelmud, the one who gave Gabiru his name. The name of this villain is Laplace. Gabiru welcomes him enthusiastically, and the villain tells him that the orc army is being led by the orc lord, and that's why Gabiru must dethrone his father and take his place. Gabiru thinks about it and says he was planning to lead the Lizardmen once he defeated the orc army anyway, but now he must take over the tribe quickly. With that, the villain executes his plan to weaken the Lizardmen tribe by making the arrogant Gabiru their new leader. At that time, Sui arrives to meet the Lizardmen king and delivers Rimuru's message, an offer for an alliance to face the orcs. The Lizardmen king is nervous at first but knows he must accept the alliance in order to defeat the orc army and the orc lord leading them. The king is even more surprised when he learns that the forest spirits are the ones who requested Rimuru to defeat the orc lord, and he immediately agrees to the alliance, but on the condition that he meets Rimuru in person. Sui agrees to his request and informs him they'll meet here exactly 7 days later. Sui leaves afterward, and the king gathers all the soldiers and informs them about the new alliance and that they'll finally be able to face the orc army. Everyone gets excited and cheers for the king, but after 4 days, the orcs arrive at the Lizardmen village, but in small numbers, so they manage to defeat them. But they discover something strange about the orcs, that they're much stronger than normal. Then Prince Gabiru arrives, and the king asks him if he succeeded in his mission. He tells him that he gathered around 7,000 soldiers under their command and that they're ready to fight. The king tells him what happened while he was away and about the powerful alliance formed with Rimuru, but Gabiru reveals his true colors at that moment, stages a coup against his father the king, arrests him and his sister the princess, and takes the throne by force. With that, Gabiru becomes the new Lizardmen leader and prepares for battle. At that time, the orc army reaches the swampy lands of the Lizardmen village, and the battle between the orcs and Lizardmen begins. At first, the Lizardmen army continues advancing and killing as many orcs as they can, but they discover that the orcs are eating the corpses on the battlefield, and their power keeps increasing more and more with time, and the Lizardmen army ends up in a difficult situation. The scene shifts to Rimuru and his followers on their way to the swamps to sign the alliance treaty to face the orc army. With him are Benimaru, Cheyenne, Hakuru, and Sui, who goes ahead to secure the path, along with Ranga, of course, and the rest of the Storm Wolves and Ogre Knights. On the way, Sui discovers a battle going on between the orcs and the Lizardmen, and the one leading the Lizardmen squad is the personal guard captain of the Lizardman king. We see her fighting a high-ranking orc, and Sui asks Rimuru if he should help the captain. Rimuru asks him first if he can finish him off quickly and help her. Sui launches with full power and eliminates all the orcs in the area. Rimuru arrives and finds that the captain is badly wounded. He immediately uses his healing potions and treats her. The captain wakes up at that moment and asks who Rimuru is. He introduces himself, and she asks him to save her father, the king, and her brother, the prince. Rimuru is surprised by the situation and asks her what's going on. She tells him about her brother's coup and how his arrogance made him believe he could defeat the orc army alone. She tells Rimuru that if they don't act quickly, the orc lord will wipe out the Lizardmen entirely. Rimuru decides to form the alliance with the princess on behalf of her father, and they set out afterward to defeat the orc lord. He asks Sui to use the shadow movement skill to free the Lizardman king. Everyone sets off afterward to complete the mission. We return to the battlefield and see the savage orcs devouring anything in their path, even living lizardmen. Just as Prince Gabaru orders the soldiers to retreat, they are surrounded by the orc army with no escape. At that moment, the orc commander appears, and Gabaru thinks he's the orc lord, and challenges him to a one-on-one duel. The orc commander introduces himself and says he's far too weak to be the orc lord. Gabaru is shocked. If someone this strong isn't the orc lord, then how powerful is the real one? The orc commander accepts Gabaru's challenge, and an incredible fight begins. The scene shifts to the evil Gelmud with his assistant, watching the plan unfold from afar, observing the duel between the orc commander and Gabaru. Trainee appears before them to stop their evil schemes. Both villains are terrified of her, and she uses wind magic with full power and blows them far away from the forest. But the villains use protective magic and resist strongly, then escape quickly. We return to the fight between Gabaru and the orc commander, and we see Gabaru struggling to dodge the attacks. Just as the orc commander is about to finish him off, Gapta appears at the last second and saves his life. The rest of the friends arrive too and wipe out a large number of orcs with ease, and Rimuru observes the battle from above. Ranga uses a special skill at that moment, Death Storm, and takes out the orc commander and those around him with black lightning. Rimuru's followers continue to annihilate the orc army. At the same time, Sui rescues the Lizardman King and his followers from captivity and eliminates all the orc enemies he encounters. Meanwhile, the orc lord finally appears, and Rimuru gets ready to defeat him. At that moment, Gelmud appears as well and asks Rimuru's followers how they dare to ruin his plans. Rimuru realizes that this is the one who gave the Ogre King's eldest son his name, and also gave Gabaru his name. We learn that his plan is the birth of a new demon lord under his command. Rimuru's Kijin friends realize that this is the villain who destroyed their village. Gabaru thinks Gelmud came to help them fight the orcs, but he's shocked when Gelmud orders them to become food for the orc lord. At that moment, the orc lord is confused and asks what he means. How will he become a demon lord? Gelmud explains that if he devours them, he will evolve into the disaster class orc and become a demon lord. Then Gelmud uses his power and launches a strong attack on Gabaru and his men. Gabaru's men jump in and take the hit to protect him, and Gabaru is deeply saddened for his men. Gelmud prepares to finish him off as well, but Rimuru intervenes at the last moment and absorbs the attack with ease. He gives Gabaru healing potions to treat the wounded lizardmen. Then he grabs Gelmud and starts hitting him hard. Gelmud begs the orc lord to help him defeat Rimuru, but the orc lord recalls his past life. His name was Geld, and the misery he lived in before gaining power. The orc lord moves in that moment and uses his weapon to slice off Gelmud's head and completely eliminate him. Then he devours him quickly. A terrifying power surges through him, and he transforms at that moment into the disaster class orc, Demon Lord. Rimuru's followers rush in at that moment and attack Geld with all their strength, but it's useless. He blocks all their attacks and continues gaining more strength by devouring his own followers. He's about to finish them off with his devastating attack, but Rimuru steps in and fights him with all his strength. An intense battle erupts between them. In the end, Rimuru decides to use the predator skill and devours him in slime form. He successfully devours him, and with that, the disaster class orc is defeated and the battle ends. The orc lord asks him afterward to forgive all his orc followers who were just following orders. Everyone celebrates the victory. Rimuru asks his Kijin followers if they want to part ways now that they've gotten their revenge. They refuse to leave him and say they will remain loyal to him forever. After that, all representatives of the monster races gather, including the orcs as well. Rimuru begins the meeting by clearing the orcs of the crimes they committed, since it was all due to the famine they were suffering from. He tells them he'll take full responsibility for the orcs' mistakes himself. Then he asks everyone for their opinion on what he said, and everyone agrees. But the orc lord asks where the orcs will live. Rimuru thinks of a solution and realizes their number is huge, around 150,000 orcs. He comes up with the idea of importing food and fresh water from the lizardmen, while the ogres provide shelter and housing. In return, the orcs will work as laborers. In other words, everyone will be part of one unified cooperative nation. Then Rimuru asks everyone if they agree with this arrangement, and he also asks Trainee if this suits her. She agrees as well and promises to offer her help too, and she appoints him as the leader of this monster nation. Rimuru then appoints the son of the former orc king as the new orc king, and he names him Geld, after his father. He continues giving names to all the orcs, and he also gives the name Abiru to the lizardmen king. We then see Abiru sentencing his son Gabaru for the crime of treason he committed, and the punishment is exile and banishment from the lizardmen village. And so they take him and cast him out of the village. As he walks away, he's surprised that his followers are leaving the village with him too. Meanwhile, we see the mastermind demon lord sitting sitting with Jelmud's assistant, talking about the failed plan. They discuss what to do about Rimuru next, and we learn that this demon lord's name is Clayman. 3 months later, we see great development in the town's affairs, and Rimuru is happy that the town is in a better state and always progressing. But suddenly, something strange happens and Sui informs Rimuru of an emergency. Hundreds of knights riding Pegasi are approaching the town, and their leader is the hero king and ruler of the nation neighboring Rimuru's monster town. Indeed, the dwarf king hero descends and meets Rimuru, and Kaijin welcomes him warmly. Rimuru introduces himself to the dwarf king and asks about the reason for his visit. The king replies that he came to learn Rimuru's true identity, and that's, of course, through his sword. The king challenges Rimuru to a duel, and Rimuru immediately agrees, and a stunning sword battle begins between them. Trainee also appears to witness everything that's happening. Rimuru successfully blocks all of the king's attacks, and with that, he's declared the winner of the match. The king then praises Rimuru and asks if his sword master is Hakuru, the same one who also taught the dwarf king swordsmanship. In the evening, everyone celebrates together. The dwarf king proposes forming an alliance treaty with his nation, and Rimuru naturally agrees, and with that, their nation is officially recognized as an independent state. They then think about a name for the new country, and they name it Jura Tempest Federation, marking the alliance between the dwarf kingdom and Rimuru's nation. 2 days later, the dwarf king visits Rimuru's town again. Rimuru is surprised by his visit now, so the king replies that he came to give him a gift. Everyone is shocked when they learn that the gift is Minister Vesta. The king explains to Rimuru that Vesta's presence is no longer useful to him, but since Rimuru's nation is still new, he'll be of great help to them. Everyone is stunned, and Kaijin asks the king if this will harm the dwarf kingdom, so why is he doing it? The king replies that the alliance between the two nations is very important, and that's why he asks both him and Vesta to continue developing this town and raise it to the highest level. The dwarf king bids them farewell and returns to his kingdom. At that moment, Rimuru meets Gabiru and his men, who he finds in his town. He asks him why he came as well, and Gabiru asks him if he can join them and become one of his followers. We also see the princess has come too to join Rimuru's followers and gain experience, unlike her brother who was expelled from the village. Rimuru agrees to their offer to join him and gives them names of their own as well. Everyone is happy with the names they received. He grants the rest of the lizardmen tribe special names too, turning them from ordinary lizardmen into dragonauts, who now look entirely human, and he places them under Sui's command. With time, the town continues to develop, and Rimuru gives Vesta a special place to continue his research on magic potions. Rimuru is very pleased with all this progress. Meanwhile, the villain group is watching the recorded video of the battle between the orc disaster and Rimuru. They get excited about confronting Rimuru, but their leader explains that using violence is difficult because of an old pact that bans violence between them and the Great Forest. Milim responds by saying that after the Storm Dragon left, none of the old pacts matter anymore. She sets off to investigate the situation and tells her companions not to get involved in her new mission. At that time, Rimuru is in his town and senses an enormous magical force rapidly approaching. Indeed, Milim arrives with tremendous power and introduces herself to him, telling him she heard he's the strongest in this town and came to meet him. Rimuru welcomes her and introduces himself as the leader of the town. Milim asks him if his human form is just a transformation or what. Rimuru shifts into his slime form and asks her what she wants exactly. She says she just came to introduce herself. Rimuru is stunned, and suddenly Cheyenne appears and attacks Milim with full force. Ranga grabs Rimuru and quickly takes him away from the area. Rimuru tries to explain the situation to him, and we're surprised by Milim's incredible power. She blocks Cheyenne's attack effortlessly. The others continue attacking her with all they've got, but it's no use. Milim uses only a small portion of her strength and defeats them easily. Rimuru challenges her and says he'll launch only one attack. If it lands, she has to end the fight and leave immediately. But if he loses, that means he'll be her servant forever. He uses the Analyze Eye from the system and finds out that her magic power is 10 times greater than his. He starts thinking fast for a solution and launches his attack, making her taste something very delicious. She loves it and becomes eager to know what it is. Rimuru tells her that if she admits defeat, he'll give her more of that amazing food. We learn it's sweet honey he found in the mountains and ate plenty of. Milim resists with difficulty. She proposes to call it a draw instead, and in return, she promises not to approach any of them again. Rimuru agrees to the deal and gives her the honey. Milim takes it and eats it happily. She then asks him if he'd like to become a demon lord himself one day. Rimuru is surprised and asks her what someone gains by becoming a demon lord. She tells him that strong opponents will come to fight him from all over the world, and that's that's really fun. He replies that he's not interested in that kind of thing at all. Malim asks him, then what does he do to enjoy life? He tells her there are many things besides fighting that bring happiness. He then asks if there's anything else fun about being a demon lord besides battles. She tells him he'll also lead many magen and humans. He says, wouldn't all that just get boring? He starts walking back home, but Malim stops him and tells him he's not going anywhere until he tells her what's more fun than being a demon lord. She keeps begging him sadly. She asks him to tell her what he does that brings him joy so she can join him, and she also asks him to take her to his village. Rimuru agrees, but under one condition, that she treats him as her lord in front of his people. She agrees on the condition that he also treats her with full respect. They agree to become friends. He brings her to the village and asks her not to cause any trouble. They go to the village, and Rimuru introduces Malim as a demon lord, shocking everyone. But everyone learns that Malim is an ally, and they're very happy with the news. Rimuru is surprised that Malim is this famous. Malim tells everyone that she'll be living with them from now on. Rimuru is stunned, but everyone is happy about it. Rimuru accepts the situation, and the joy and celebrations continue in the village for a while because of the news. At that time, news of Rimuru's kingdom reaches the human kingdoms. A count is seen talking with the guild master about this nation, and how it suddenly developed and became a monster nation. What's even stranger is that the leader of this nation is a slime. The guild master asks what the nations should do about this new country. Should they treat it as an enemy or try to become allies? But of course, they must take into account that this slime is extremely peaceful and poses no threat to any countries. So they decide they have to meet Rimuru first and then decide their stance on him. At that time, the guild master departs along with our adventurer friends, Erin and her team. We then return to Rimuru's town, filled with peace, and everyone is enjoying everything going on. We see Rimuru in Vesta's lab, who has just finished developing a magical communication crystal. Vesta asks him if he tried it, and Rimuru replies that he already did. He contacted the Dwarf King and informed him that Rimuru had taken care of the demon lord Malim, and that she's now officially part of their alliance. After that, they test the new healing potions they made. We learn that it's composed of 99% extract from the hypocute herb. This makes it the highest grade healing potion in the world. Everyone praises Vesta for his excellent work. Rimuru then suggests selling the potion to make it a valuable source of income for the town. Kaijin thinks it's a great potion and says they shouldn't waste it for daily use, because that would devalue it. Vesta agrees and suggests Rimuru negotiate with the Dwarf King to manufacture lower grade potions here in the town, since the main source is the Dwarf Kingdom. Everyone agrees to the idea, and Rimuru heads out to check on the rest of the town. Suddenly, he's surprised by massive explosions in the center of town. As soon as he arrives, he finds all the townspeople gathered in one place. Sui tells Rimuru that a new guest has arrived in the town and Malim is checking things out. At that moment, Rimuru sees that Malim has taken someone down. She tells him that the guy tried to mock them, so she taught him a proper lesson. We flash back to the moment those people arrived and introduced themselves to the Ogre King. They're a group of knights under Demon Lord Carrion, known as the Black Leopard Fong, led by Phobio. They came to take control of the town and make it submit to them. Their leader strikes the Ogre King hard when he protests. At that moment, Malim appears and terrifies the leader. She strikes him with immense force. He tries to block her attack, but it's useless. We return to the present after Malim tells Rimuru everything that happened. He tells her, "Didn't we agree not to cause any trouble in the nation without my permission?" She replies, "Yes, but this was different." He tells her she defended the Ogre King, so he'll forgive her this time. But as punishment, she's not allowed to eat today. She bursts into tears and says that's too cruel. She goes to punch the leader again, saying, "It's his fault for making me mad." She's about to hit him again, but Rimuru quickly stops her and gives her food to calm her down. Everyone enters the conference room, and Rimuru asks them why they came. The leader looks down on Rimuru because he's a slime. Rimuru replies that although he seems weak, he's far stronger than him. He tells him that if they keep this up, there will be enmity between his nation and Demon Lord Carrion. The leader mocks him again. Rimuru responds that if they keep going down this path, he'll have no choice but to declare war on Carrion's forces. The leader backs off and explains that they were sent here by Carrion to find a strong magen to serve him. Rimuru realizes that not only Malim has been watching the battle, but other demon lords too. Malim gets very upset that Carrion didn't listen to her and sent scouts to investigate Rimuru. After understanding the situation, Rimuru asks them to leave. The others are surprised. Rimuru tells them he can't kill them, so he'll just let them go. He tells the leader and his group that if Carrion wants to talk, he can contact them anytime and set up a meeting. The leader and his group leave leave, furious. Rimuru then asks Malim about Demon Lord Carrion. She refuses at first, but because of Rimuru's insistence, she tells them everything they need to know about the Demon Lords, Clayman, Carrion, and Fry. Everyone understands now that they've become targets of the Demon Lords. They decide to consult Trainee about this for advice. The scene shifts to one of the nations surrounding the Great Forest, Falmouth Kingdom. We learn that this kingdom sent an army to defeat the Orc Disaster Demon Lord. They're led by a man named Yum. At that time, Yum and his team arrive at the outskirts of Rimuru's town. Suddenly, our adventurer friends Aaron's team appear running from a giant night spider monster. Yum's team steps in to defeat the monster, and Yum takes the lead in attacking. Then Gobta and the Ogre Knights show up, and they recognize Aaron's team. Gobta quickly attacks the monster and defeats it in seconds. Yum and the guild master are amazed by Gobta's strength. Gobta takes the spider back to town to have it for dinner. He brings all the adventurers to meet Rimuru, and Rimuru introduces himself and his nation. He asks them if people from Brumond and Falmouth came to investigate their town. Yum acts arrogant toward Rimuru as usual, seeing him as just a slime. He asks why all these monsters follow a simple slime. Cheyenne gets angry at Yum for insulting Rimuru. He insults her too. She punches him hard, and he passes out. Rimuru later heals him with a potion. Rimuru then proposes an alliance treaty with the two human nations. He tells them they already have an alliance with the Dwarf Kingdom. The envoys are shocked. He tells them he'll ensure safe routes for trade through his nation. The guild master asks if the Dwarf Kingdom really recognizes the monster nation as a legitimate state. At that moment, Minister Vesta steps in and confirms Rimuru's words. The guild master agrees to form an alliance treaty with the monster town. Rimuru asks Yum if he wants to make a pact as well. Yum asks what exactly he means. Rimuru replies that Falmouth paid this group with money, so they can deal with him in the same way. That way, they'll be the heroes who defeated the Orc Disaster. Yum thinks it over. Then he decides to trust Rimuru, agrees to the proposal, and also becomes one of his followers. Yum and his men begin training under Hakuru to become the heroes who defeated the Orc Disaster. The scene then shifts to Demon Lord Clayman, who's talking to his assistant about what to do with Rimuru now that Malim has joined him. His assistant tells him that Demon Lord Fry is completely uninterested in what's happening in the Great Forest. She's now concerned with something much more dangerous. Charybdis is about to be resurrected soon. Demon Lord Clayman is shocked to hear that Charybdis will be revived. We learn that it's a monstrous, terrifying beast. He gives his assistant Ter another dangerous mission, to go to Rimuru and resolve the situation, but without resorting to violence as much as possible. Then, she must quickly search for the sealed location of the beast and see if it can be tamed. Tyr sets off quickly to complete her mission. We go now to the Black Leopard Fang Knights, and we see that their leader is still furious with Rimuru. His companions try to calm him down and tell him there's nothing they can do as long as Demon Lord Malim is there. Even their own Master Carrion can't do anything in her presence. But the leader refuses to accept that and decides he must get revenge before returning. His friends try to reason with him, telling him revenge would be difficult or even impossible given their current situation. At that moment, one of the evil Majin arrives and introduces himself. His name is Footman. He tells them he's a member of the moderate Harlequin Alliance, and he's called the Angry Mime Clown. Tyr appears alongside him and tells them not to worry. They're not enemies. On the contrary, they're here to help them take revenge. The leader's friend tries to warn him about these people, but Phobio doesn't listen and gets swept up in the villain's words. They tell him that if he wants to become strong, he must draw upon the power of Charybdis and become a demon lord himself. Phobio decides to become a demon lord to be more useful to Carrion, and he accepts their offer. He then says goodbye to his companions and sets off with the two clowns on his new mission. After some time, Phobio and the two clowns reach the location of the world's most dangerous monster, Charybdis, and Phobio prepares to release the seal and subdue the beast. The clowns explain to Phobio that the only way to subdue the monster is to merge with it inside his body so they become one being. Phobio is shocked because this is extremely dangerous. They explain that he must release the beast himself or else the monster will awaken on its own, and then they'll all be in grave danger. Phobio thinks about the situation and decides he must take control of the monster's power himself before it awakens. He enters the cave, full of vengeful hatred, determined to control the beast. We then find out that the two clowns were tricking him all along and used him to carry out the plan ordered by Clayman, which Ter is executing. The next morning, the scene shifts to Rimuru's town. A new forest spirit appears at that moment, and she introduces herself. Her name is Traya, the younger sister of Trainee. Rimuru asks her about her strange aura. She tells them there's an urgent matter. An enormous disaster is approaching. A fearsome monster has been revived, and it's a calamity class being named Charybdis. She tells them this monster's power is equal to that of the demon lords. She explains that all the forest spirits, along with Trainee, have gone to delay the beast's advance, but they're no match for its strength. Also, the monster is heading straight for this town. Rimuru is shocked by this news, and they head to the conference hall so she can explain everything in detail. They learn that this monster is the child of the great storm dragon, born from a cloud of Veldora's magicules. Rimuru realizes in that moment that he and Charybdis are essentially siblings, and that Charybdis is targeting him. Everyone starts thinking about how to deal with this problem. Malim offers to handle it herself, but everyone refuses, saying they shouldn't rely on her to solve all their problems just because she's their friend. They say they must protect their nation themselves. Malim is deeply saddened by this, and Rimuru is nervous too, but he agrees with their words. He commands everyone to prepare for the upcoming battle against Charybdis. After that, Rimuru sits with the guild master and the adventurer friends, and he tells them his secret, that he's from another world and came to this one after dying in his own world. He also tells them his entire story from the beginning, including his promise to Shizu to defeat the demon lord Leon. Then we see the terrifying monster heading with its army directly toward Rimuru's city, and Rimuru confirms at that moment that the monster is indeed coming to the town for him. We see all of Rimuru's forces ready for battle. Even the king of the dwarves arrives with reinforcements to help them in the upcoming confrontation. The companions keep advancing and fighting the flying sharks of the monster's army. They manage to take down the first two. Everything seems to be going perfectly. Malim asks Rimuru to join the fight too. He tells her that he ordered her to stay in the town. She responds that she came here just to watch at least, because staying in the kingdom is way too boring. We see Sui shining with his unique skills, taking control of one of the flying sharks and making it eliminate the other sharks. The companions continue to fight until they defeat all the flying sharks. After that, only Charybdis remains. All the companions head to defeat it. Rimuru asks the system for a proper way to defeat the monster, but unfortunately the system doesn't know the answer. Then the monster attacks using its hard-scale manipulation ability. But the companions keep resisting, and Ranga, Sui, and Cheyenne launch their attacks on the monster. But Rimuru stops them at that moment, telling them what they're doing is just useless foolishness. He decides to face the monster himself. Rimuru uses the gluttony skill to devour all the hard scales effortlessly. He asks the companions to retreat, telling them he can handle this himself and reassures them. The companions follow Rimuru's orders, then they launch into battle against the monster with full force. The battle continues for a long time with no result. But suddenly, Rimuru hears the monster mention Malim's name in anger. It wants to kill her. Rimuru realizes at that moment that the monster's rage isn't directed at him, but at Malim, which means this battle was meant for Malim all along. So he decides to let Malim help in the fight. He quickly wakes her up when he finds her sleeping out of boredom. Malim uses her eye of evaluation on the monster and discovers that the monster has possessed Phobio's body. Malim gets excited when she learns she's finally allowed to fight. She gets ready and rushes forward. Rimuru asks her not to kill Phobio and to help him break free from the monster. The battle begins, and Malim uses her skill effortlessly to defeat the monster. Rimuru quickly catches Phobio before he falls after being freed from the monster. Then he uses healing potions on him to restore him and extracts Charybdis' magic core from his body. Rimuru thanks the commander of the Dwarf Kingdom Knights, Lord Dwarf, for helping in such a dangerous mission. Phobio wakes up afterward, confused about what happened. He apologizes deeply when he remembers everything. Trainee and her sister appear at that moment and ask him how he found Charybdis' seal. Phobio explains everything that happened. The companions realize then that their true enemy is an organization called the Moderate Harlequin Alliance. But Malim warns them that Clayman might be the one behind all this. Phobio says that no matter who planned all this, that person must take responsibility. And he confirms that Demon Lord Carrion has nothing to do with any of this. Rimuru forgives him and tells him to be more careful next time and not get tricked again. He allows him to leave. Phobio is surprised, and Carrion shows up at that moment. Malim had sensed his presence all along. Carrion then introduces himself to Rimuru and asks him if he's the one who killed Gelmud. Rimuru responds, yes, and asks if Carrion is thinking of revenge. Carrion refuses and orders Phobio to get up, then strikes him hard as punishment. He asks Rimuru to forgive his subordinate and tells him he owes him a lot for saving Phobio. He says that if Rimuru ever needs anything, he'll always be there to help. Rimuru proposes that Carrion joins their alliance. Carrion agrees immediately and declares himself Demon Lord of the Beast Kingdom Carrion, a new member member of their alliance starting today and swears his allegiance. Carrion takes Phobio with him and says goodbye to Rimuru, returning to his kingdom. And thus, the dangerous mission ends. In the evening, everyone returns to the town, and they examine the resources they gathered from the monsters' bodies. They cut up the shark meat to prepare it for dinner. Kaijin collects the scales to use them in making armor and weapons. Everyone continues to celebrate the amazing victory and enjoys a peaceful time for a while. Then Malim says goodbye to everyone and tells them she'll be leaving for a while to return to her duties. She reassures them that she'll speak with all the demon lords and make sure they don't interfere with their town again. At night, Rimuru dreams of Shizu telling him that he must save a group of children. She asks him to go to the royal capital quickly to help them. Rimuru wakes up immediately, feeling like this wasn't just a regular dream. In the morning, Rimuru reflects on what happened, and he asks himself, was that a real message from Shizu? He remembers her story about being a teacher at the academy and that the children are also from another world, just like Rimuru and Shizu. At that moment, Rimuru decides to travel to Ingratia's capital to see those children. He informs everyone about his decision, and they become worried about him, but Ranga reassures them that he'll accompany him and protect him with his life if needed. Rimuru asks them to protect the town as best they can, tells them a temporary goodbye, and sets off on his new journey. After some time traveling, Rimuru arrives at the capital, and of course, he's shocked by the massive number of people there. He wanders around searching for the school, and as he walks through the city, he's amazed by its incredible development. He heads to meet with the Free Guild Master, and the assistant takes him to the waiting room until the master arrives. At that moment, the master Yuki enters, and he appears to be a completely normal human. He welcomes Rimuru and introduces himself, but suddenly, Yuki senses something strange in Rimuru. Rimuru asks him about himself and tells him that he's the leader of the Jura Tempest Federation. But Yuki focuses on the mask Rimuru has, and he asks, is that Shizu's mask? Rimuru replies, yes, and part of my ability as a slime is to imitate the forms of beings I consume. That response surprises Yuki, and he attacks Rimuru at lightning speed, but Rimuru easily deflects the attack and tries to calm him down. Then he surprises him with a word from their original world, Japan. Yuki calms down and realizes the truth. Rimuru isn't a threat, he's just like him. Rimuru learns that Yuki is also from Japan. Yuki asks him, are you here looking for a way back to our world? Rimuru replies, no, that's not my goal, but is there really a way back? Yuki looks sad and tells him there's no way currently. Yuki understands that the reason Rimuru came is because of the children Shizu cared for. He agrees immediately, since this was Shizu's wish. Then he takes Rimuru to the academy and assigns him as the student's teacher. Rimuru asks, how did these kids end up here? Yuki replies, they were summoned from different countries in the real world. They were part of failed experiments to summon powerful heroes. After that, Shizu adopted them and devoted her life to saving them. Rimuru enters the classroom for the first time, greets the students, and introduces himself. But suddenly, the students attack him without any warning. But Rimuru dodges their attacks effortlessly and starts thinking, how am I supposed to handle this chaos? Rimuru gets ready to start the school lesson. He takes attendance for the students. We learn the first student is Kenya Misaki, the second, Ryota Sekiguchi, also Gail Gibson, Alice Rondo, and Chloe Aubert, but none of them respond to him and they ignore him. So Rimuru summons Ranga to scare them and calls their names again. They all reply immediately. Then Kenya says, so you're threatening us with that giant dog? But he's surprised to find that Ranga is friendly and wants to play with him. Rimuru introduces himself to them and tells them he's their new teacher starting today. He starts thinking of a way to earn their trust after everyone else had abandoned them. He takes them to the academy yard to play a fun game to help them release their anger. The game is a one-on-one fight between them and Rimuru. The boys get excited and say, if you don't use Ranga, we won't need 10 minutes to beat you. Rimuru appoints Ryota as the referee. The first fight begins with Kenya. Kenya picks a weapon he likes. Rimuru says, if you lose this fight against me, you have to show me some respect. The fight starts, but Rimuru dodges all of Kenya's attacks effortlessly. It goes on like that until Kenya gets tired. Time runs out and Rimuru wins. Next up is Chloe, who loves comic books. The match starts and Rimuru is surprised by Chloe's ability to use water magic. She traps Rimuru in a water prison and prepares to hit him with water blades. But of course, Rimuru doesn't give up and escapes her magic easily. He wins again. Then he goes to praise her for her amazing skill. Chloe cries with joy. Next is Gale's turn, and he uses impressive magic bullets. But Rimuru absorbs absorbs them easily, shocking Gale. So Rimuru wins again. Then it's Ryota's turn, and it's the same outcome. Even though he's very strong, he still loses to Rimuru like the others. And the same happens with Alice. Afterward, Rimuru discovers that the energy in their bodies has dropped significantly. He thinks of a way to regulate their power and considers sealing the energy, but the system tells him the energy is fused with their souls, and no one can separate it. So Rimuru realizes he doesn't have much time to find another method. He tells the children they've now seen how strong he is. He swears on Shizu's mask that he'll protect them from any danger. All the children are stunned when they see the mask. Rimuru tells them that when Shizu entrusted him with the mask, she also entrusted him with them. At that moment, the children decide to trust him. Rimuru promises he'll never let them down. In the evening, Rimuru uses the teleportation gate like Vesta taught him to visit Trainee. Rimuru thinks about letting high-ranking spirits dwell inside the children's bodies, just like Ifrit was inside Shizu. This way, the kids could control their powers much more. Indeed, Rimuru meets Trainee and asks her where he can find high-ranking spirits. She tells him about a place called the Dwelling of Spirits, which is ruled by the Queen of Spirits. She explains that there are many entrances to the place, but the one she knows disappeared long ago. Rimuru spends the whole day thinking of a way to reach the Queen of Spirits. But that night, he dreams of Shizu and assures her that he'll handle everything himself. Months pass after that, but unfortunately, Rimuru still doesn't find any solution. He goes for a walk later with the children. He tells them they have to train in their combat exercises. He decides to reward them with brand new manga volumes if they train well. The kids are thrilled and compete to train first just to get the books. Rimuru spars with the children, but defeats them again with ease. They get sad because it means they won't get to read the manga. But suddenly, Rimuru and Ranga sense an evil energy approaching from the sky. Rimuru uses the system to identify what it is, and it turns out to be a sky dragon. Sure enough, the dragon is heading straight for the kingdom with full force. Rimuru quickly decides to go after the dragon before it can harm anyone. He tells Ranga to stay with the children and protect them. The kids are very nervous and worried about Rimuru. They tell him he won't be able to defeat the dragon. It's too dangerous. He reassures them and sets off quickly. At that time, the kingdom's knights are fighting the dragon with all their strength, but none of their attacks affected at all. Just as the dragon is about to finish them off, Rimuru appears at the last moment, blocks the attack easily, and uses his power to devour the dragon. With that, he saves the kingdom. Everyone believes the hero was the one who saved the town. In the evening, Yuki tells Rimuru that a merchant named Miles has invited him to dinner. He also allowed the kids to come along. Rimuru asks him what the invitation is for. Yuki replies that it's because a mysterious warrior saved his life today. And of course, everyone knows Rimuru was the one who saved them from the dragon. Rimuru asks Yuki if the merchant can be trusted. Yuki says yes, he has an official merchant certificate from the Kingdom of Bloomend and the Free Union. In the evening, Rimuru and the kids go to the dinner, and the kids really enjoy the food. We see the merchant sitting with Rimuru and thanking him for saving him. Rimuru talks with him about economics and trade, and tells him about his town. Rimuru suggests he visit the town. Everyone agrees to visit and establish mutual trade. The merchant realizes that the deal could be very profitable for both sides. Rimuru says goodbye to the merchant and heads home. He later finds out that the merchant's wife knows information about the Dwelling of Spirits and the Queen of Spirits. He asks her if she knows anything and how he can get there. She tells him the location and how to reach it in exchange for a generous payment. It's in the Olga Nature Park, in the northern part of a border nation called the Republic of Ulgratia. Rimuru and the children set off for the location and finally arrive at the forest. And they finally arrive at the Dwelling of Spirits, standing before the gate. Rimuru asks the children if they're ready for the adventure and explains to them the dangers they might face inside. The kids get motivated and enter the Dwelling of Spirits with Rimuru. On the way in, everyone is amazed by the stunning entrance view, and Rimuru senses the presence of traps inside designed to distract them. But suddenly, a group of spirits starts talking to them through telepathy, trying to scare them. Rimuru asks the spirits if they live here and requests that they guide him to the high-ranking spirits. The spirits laugh at him and tell them they'll show them the path, but only on one condition. A strange path suddenly appears in front of them. Rimuru and the children have no choice but to proceed through it. Suddenly, a mechanical warrior appears, and the challenge is to defeat it. Rimuru gets excited about the fight and asks Ranga to protect the children. Then the battle between him and the robot begins. Rimuru easily dodges all all its attacks, strikes it with black flame, and defeats it instantly. The spirits are shocked by what happened, and Rimuru wins the challenge. Afterward, Rimuru discovers the location of the spirits and tells them to show themselves quickly, or he'll defeat them too. They appear immediately out of fear, and one of them is a tiny fairy. She introduces herself as one of the 10 great demon lords, and her name is Ramiris. At first, Rimuru doesn't believe her, but she then tells him the details of her power. He tells her that he knows Malim and that she's his friend. She asks him if he's the slime who became the ruler of the great forest. He says yes, and it's the first time the children realize their teacher is a slime, and they're amazed and happy about how strong he is despite being a slime. Rimuru tells the fairy about the children's situation and that he wants to save their lives by forming contracts with high-ranking spirits. We notice that this fairy is kind at heart, and she agrees to help them with their mission. They continue together to meet the high-ranking spirits, and they proceed until they reach the deepest part of the dwelling of spirits. Rimuru asks the fairy if there are any high-ranking spirits here. She says yes, but they must respond to the call as each of them has their own will. However, if they don't come, Rimuru can separate a part of his own energy to form new high-ranking spirits. And the time comes to summon the spirits, so Rimuru asks the fairy what they should do to call them. She tells them to call out by saying, "Help" or "Let's play," and if any spirits are interested, they'll show up and the summoning will be successful. The kids get nervous in case nothing responds, but Rimuru reassures them. Gil goes first, and he's very nervous, so Rimuru comforts him and calls out in his own special way. There's actually a reaction at that moment, and what appears are scattered fragments from other spirits. So Rimuru decides to use all these fragments to create a new high-ranking spirit using his skill, and the process is successful. A new high-ranking spirit appears for Gil, and the mission is completed perfectly. Next is Alice's turn, and the same idea happens with her. Rimuru also uses his skills, and she too receives a new high-ranking spirit. Then it's Kenya's turn, and this time a true high-ranking spirit appears immediately on its own. It greets them and introduces itself as a spirit of light, and it turns out she knows the fairy. Kenya agrees with the spirit, and the contract is made. A contract is also made with Ryota through creating a new spirit, and we see the wonder of Chloe, who summons the strongest spirit of all. Everyone is amazed and doesn't understand what's happening, but suddenly the spirit appears. It's the embodiment of the ancient hero's spirit, and it successfully dwells inside Chloe. Everyone is happy with completing the mission and that all the children are now safe. Rimuru thanks the fairy for her help, and she becomes very shy from their thanks. Then Rimuru and the kids return, and he meets Yuki and tells him what happened. He asks if he'll give the children new identities and make them members of the Federation. Yuki replies that it's an excellent idea and that of course he'll do it if the children want it. But for now, it's better they keep studying at the academy to better decide their future. Rimuru later sits alone and asks Shizu if she's satisfied now that her wish has been fulfilled. At that moment, there's an evil demon lord watching over everything. We then see Rimuru saying goodbye to the children before heading back to his town again, and they're all sad. Rimuru bids them farewell and asks Toki to take good care of them. The children keep crying because they don't want him to leave, and Chloe cries the most, so Rimuru gives her Shizu's mask as a keepsake from him. Then he gives each of them a parting gift as well, and promises that he and Ranga will return to visit them again and take them to his town.